The big question, of course, still continues. What? Oh, dear me. The big question, of course, still continues. What to do about Boris Johnson? He is a man who has 40% of his party has no confidence in him. He hasn't got any plans. He is now doing stuff with the Northern Ireland Protocol that will lead to trade wars and bigger problems. He came out just a couple of days ago and said, "Oh, I've built, amazing relations with the EU." That's laughable to say the least, and it's a lie at its very worst. But what do you do in this situation? Well, ultimately, we have to now, as we said before, look at the non-parliamentary party. What has been going on in there? Because the cult of Johnson, as I suppose it's going to get called in a moment, doesn't really currently exist in the non-parliamentary party. Indeed, the biggest force against Johnson, against him becoming leader back in 2019 in that leadership election, was the non-parliamentary party. And even then, you had the more centrist MPs saying, if he comes in, it's going to be a disaster. You had people like Jeremy Hunt saying how bad a prime minister he would be, even all the way back to Michael Gove, who very much tried to sink, he did sink Johnson's chances back in, of course, the 2016 election completely. The big question is could Tory donors, shall we say, start to withdraw increasingly more support from the party as Boris Johnson remains there, because they are not happy with the direction the party is going in, especially with the chances of causing an out-and-out trade war with the EU, which will, basically, it will hit their bottom line. And what was the catalyst that caused us to join or should we say, the beginnings of the EU in the first place? It was Tory donors putting pressure on, at that time, Harold Macmillan, I believe it was, to join the market, because they were losing out on money by not being in it. And we are slowly but surely starting to see the exact same conditions be recreated about this. So, history has a bizarre way of repeating itself. It's almost certainly. But anyway, let's go diving into this then, shall we? But before we do that, please do remember to hit that like, share, and subscribe button. And of course, down below there is a link to my Patreon page and a notification link called Buy Me Coffee, where you can, buy me coffee. And as always, thank you very much to all the people who do help and support the channel that way. So, off we go to The Guardian on this. The title of Tory Donors and a Polarised Party is Losing Faith in the Johnson Cult. A big Tory donor has said he cannot support Boris Johnson after accusing him of overseeing an unconservative government and delivering a, quote, pathetic tax-cutting pledge and refusing to heed calls for change, of course, of his own premiership. When the Prime Minister is facing a split over Brexit within days and the mounting revolt against party backbenchers after last week's humiliating confidence vote, the hotelier Sir Rocco Forte said that he will, quote, will not put up with the direction that Johnson is taking the party. He told The Observer that Johnson has mishandled the Partygate scandal and has been badly damaged by Monday's confidence vote, in which 148 MPs opposed the Prime Minister. However, in a sign of wider despair over the performance of the Johnson administration, Forte said it was not simply a, quote, not a conservative government, that he was elected to deliver Brexit and win an election, which he did, and he's probably the only person who could have done it in the way that it was done, he said. But those of us who supported him expected him to build a competent team around him, as he did when he was Mayor of London, and govern effectively. That just hasn't happened. And that's the reality, that the government is not a conservative government. If you're running a business and you don't feel this government is behind you in any way, that's what a conservative government is supposed to be about. Unless he changes tack and does something about that, which doesn't seem very likely, as he suggested he's doing all the things that he needs to be done already, I don't think people on the right path of the party, like me, will put up with this. Unless I see change, I don't think I can support him into the future. I support the Conservative government. Unless I see a Conservative government, what's the point of supporting it? Forte, of course, handed Johnson over £100,000 at the last election campaign, and worryingly for Johnson, other donors are also losing faith. But there are competing views on how the Prime Minister should actually fix things. John Caldwell, the billionaire founder of the Phones for You, who gave the Tories at least £500,000 before the last election, would not state if Johnson should go, but called for more investment, saying, "Rather than prudence, we need to borrow on an unprecedented scale and invest wisely in productivity and profitability," he said, pointing to renewable energy, infrastructure subsidies for industries, and apprenticeships. It comes as the former Conservative Party chairman, Chris Patten, said that the party was in the grip of a Johnson cult, with the cabinet ministers unwilling to turn on him. But the party was in the midst of a very long and nervous breakdown. Lord Patten added, "We do not have a Conservative government at all, but an English nationalist party with its populist, but fatally without being popular." Unease amongst the donors and the grandees is another sign that despite the relative calm among MPs since Monday's vote, Johnson remains on unstable ground. The confrontation is already building over Brexit, and on Monday, the government, again, it's been published this, plans to effectively override the Northern Ireland Protocol and the section of the Brexit deal which are the EU governing the region. While the government has been trying to reassure MPs that the proposals will not reignite Brexit tensions, the Observer has been told by multiple sources that the bill includes sections that override the protocol agreed with the EU, a move that critics say is illegal and will spark a rebellion. One Conservative source said, "The government is lying to its own MPs and the media about the legal focus of the bill. The Tory party is sleepwalking into a repeat of the Owen Paterson vote and Partygate. And again, the positioning of the party is full square in support of law breaking over the rule of law." It is understood that key legal advice was not presented to the Cabinet Committee overseeing the plans, and the Observer has established that Thomas D. Gant, an academic lawyer who worked with the US State Department during the Trump administration, has written the legal articles supporting the hard Brexit and has been advising on the bill, and White Horses say that while he offered advice, he was not a central part of the legal team. There has, of course, been a frantic legal and political negotiations taking place between Johnson, his cabinet, and MPs in the last week, and Johnson has been pressured to tie a hard line and effectively override the protocol. This creates a major flashpoint for Johnson, as some pro-Brexit MPs, including some from the European Research Group that have caused persistent problems for Theresa May, could withdraw their support for him if the plans are seen as too weak. However, moderate Tories are also threatening to rebel if they deem the legislation breaks international law. And an ERG source laughed off the idea that they had, quote, "a Machiavellian plot to take control of the party by holding Johnson to ransom." They said that it was the most important to ensure that the European Court of Justice did not oversee UK law. And there have already been signs of an immediate impact of the COVID pandemic as it recedes, that clashes of Brexit are indeed reopening. And Mark Jensen, the Tory MP for Wilkington, told the Daily Mail that, quote, "Lefties, Lords, and Lovies were showing that they still did not accept the referendum result." The paper also claimed that in an essay that a, quote, "Remainer counter-revolution has begun," and, quote, "replacing Johnson could lead to the reversal of Brexit." So, again, it's what we've really been seeing for the past couple of weeks. But the more interesting fact is here that the donors are turning against Johnson and what they could do if they start to pull support from the Conservative Party. That will be interesting. Like I say, they've certainly voiced their opinions as we've seen here, but so far we haven't seen a denial of funds. We're not going to fund you anymore. That would almost certainly send, I think, a lot bigger shockwaves to the party if, of course, a couple of the big donors came out and said, "We're not going to support you anymore." At least until certainly you've got rid of Johnson. That could be certainly one potential aspect of this. And that could be huge if that starts to happen that way. Because if you think the Tories are going to put up with Johnson when the donors are doing a runner, again, he will be out very, very quickly if that starts to become the case. But of course, that's not the case currently. We haven't heard of any big donors pulling their funding yet. Maybe it has happened behind the scenes, and maybe it just hasn't been said yet. Who knows? But of course, the Northern Ireland situation is very much rumbling on and causing huge problems. We don't know when it's going to come to the bill stage yet. We don't know what the voting's going to be like yet. But put it this way, the DUP is under no pressure whatsoever to return to Stormont. And as they said originally, oh yes, we're not going to go back to Parliament until you solve to put problems to solve this problem. Oh look, we've got the solution to this problem. We're going to override the protocol. Well, we're not going to go back until at least voting begins. Oh well, voting has been set for this date. Well, we're not going to go back until it's at least on the statute book. And as we've said before, the DUP are just prepared to cause crisis after crisis after crisis until what they want is a complete removal of the sea of the border in the Irish Sea. They want that gone permanently. They do not care that it is a green and a red lane as it's been described at the moment. They want it gone permanently. And also, they are very, very much for, well, trashing the Good Friday Agreement because, well, they've never been in favour of it to begin with. So, again, things could go really, really badly on this, almost certainly resulting in a trade war. But that's what happens when you elect people like Boris Johnson, and then he, well, gets a team around him who are just as clueless as he is, with no ideas, no plans, and just are there for, well, careers, essentially, and just there to be, well, really like the power. Again, Priti Patel's immigration plans and her, you know, the bills that she's sort of been very much keen, responsible for, really bad, bordering on authoritarian. Well, they are authoritarian. Her Rwanda immigration plan is going to go really, really badly. Of course, currently the flights were stopped, but they are very much determined to continue them. And of course, what's going to happen? Well, we've seen what happened with Australia. We've seen what happened with Israel when they tried this. It ended in complete human rights nightmare. And to be honest, even though we are sending all this money to help support these refugees in Rwanda, it's very, very doubtful that, shall we say, the money will actually end up helping these refugees in Rwanda. And as one Conservative MP put it, it is far, 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 far cheaper to put these, refugees up in the hotel of the Ritz in central London than it is to be following through with this Rwanda plan. So, as always, thank you very much for watching. Please do remember to like that, to hit that like, share, and subscribe button. And of course, down below, there is a link to my Patreon page and a notification link called Buy Me Coffee, where you can, well, buy me coffee. And as always, thank you very much for watching, and we'll see you all next time.